You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down in Oklahoma City today. Talk a little bit about barbecue. Talk about some food. You all love barbecuing. You all love eating barbecue. But my guest today is Scott Bartlow of Bartlows BBQ. I'm going to put all the links to his YouTube and his channel in the description. You can go check it out on social medias while we talk, because, well, you're probably going to be really hungry if you scroll his Instagram, because I definitely was. But Scott, thanks so much for coming down. Excited to dive into your story and hear about kind of your backstory and how you get into, the barbecue thing, but also your day job. You're a pastor as well.
Yep, absolutely. I'm excited. Thank you for having me here.
Excited to dive in. Right from the start, where are you born and raised? Are you an Oklahoman, or do you come here like me?
Yeah, so no, I'm born and raised Oklahoma City, Northwest Oklahoma City, and then went to Putnam City North, and then went to University of Central Oklahoma. So I am an Okie through and through. And then I did move to Chicago right after college and lived there for about 8 years.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I built a family, decided to come back to Oklahoma, where we're from.
So you met your wife in Chicago?
So actually, we met at the University of Central Oklahoma. I was in fraternity and she was in sorority, and that's how we connected. But I always tell her, and we joke now, that she gave me the friend card in college. And so it wasn't until I moved away until we started dating. And then obviously the rest is history.
Yeah. So quite a homebody then, if you wanted to stay in state to go to university.
Yep, absolutely. And I was, between my brother and I, we're pretty much homebodies, but then I always had that adventurous spirit. And so I was the first one in the family to move out of state as far as after college. And so that was a big shock to everybody. But I have an adventurous spirit, so that moving to Chicago was just awesome. Lived in the northwest suburbs, and they have a thing called the Metra, and so you kind of get the best of both lives of living in the suburbs, but yet commute downtown to Chicago and see just an amazing city. So, and we always kind of said when I lived there, you're in two seasons in Chicago. It's either winter or construction. I would say Oklahoma's not too far off on the construction side of things as far as the seasons. But yeah, it was a great season living there and then moving back home.
Yeah. I went there once for a golf tournament in college, and it was freezing cold and it was foggy. Went to the Bean or whatever it is, and that's about it. It was so cold. Had a great dinner, some fancy restaurant that one of our donors took us to, which was really nice. But other than that, I haven't felt cold like that for a long time. It was so cold.
I remember my first winter. This is before I got married, and a bunch of us guys, we rented a townhouse. And I remember my first winter, and the weatherman came on, and he said it's 18 below or something just insane. And he's like, literally, do not go outside. You might die. And I said, where did I just move? I can't even go outside because I'm going to freeze to death. So, they've got some brutal winters for sure.
Yeah.
But you can live there a lifetime and also have just amazing eateries and not visit every place. There's so many good hidden gems to eat as well.
Yeah. So backtrack a little bit. In high school, going into university, did you know what you wanted to do, or were you just kind of let's figure it out?
Yeah, no, I probably had a sense since I was in probably my junior to senior year in high school. As you mentioned, vocationally I'm a pastor. I had a sense probably late in high school that I wanted to had a calling to be a pastor and help people. I found God at a really young age. but really found that relationship with God probably in middle school, and went through some highs and lows in life, just like anybody else, and really found like, you know what, I would love to help other people with this. So I kind of got that sense in late high school, but just like maybe anybody else, you know, you pursue as a young adult, just your purpose in life. Definitely had seasons of wrestling. Like, do I really feel like, God, am I hearing you right? Like, this is what you want me to do? And so I had a lot of wrestlings through college. So I kind of got, when I went to UCO, just got a communications degree to kind of have that fail safe of just going, I'm not sure if I'm going to stay down that path long term, but just continue to get that affirmation. So yeah, kind of had a sense at a pretty young age, but always open to, you know, whatever direction that God might have, in store for me. So
you go to, I mean, does UCO doesn't strike me as a school you go to become a pastor.
No, it's not. It's a state school, liberal arts, definitely. It's not a seminary. It's not a Christian base.
Right.
So it just went there just to get just a basic degree. And then, like you were saying, just kind of keep my options open. But I knew I had a sense that was the path, but I just wasn't sure when I graduated I was going to step into that. So I remember I was thinking I was going to go into human resources. So I started interviewing before I accepted a pastoral job, and had an opportunity to interview at a human resources business in Oklahoma City. And one of those things that kind of made it very evident that I need to step into being a pastor is at the end of this interview, the vice president knew I kind of had a background in ministry and being a youth pastor when I was in college and high school. And she started asking me questions about her son at the end of the interview. Yeah. She offered me the job, but she started asking me she was asking for pastoral advice at the end of it. And I left that interviewing going, man, the seat turned and the conversation turned, and it just was almost an affirmation of like, I turned that job down as much as, because I didn't have an opportunity. I didn't have a job offer at another church at that point. And it was kind of a step of faith to kind of graduated college. Your parents were like, you're not living with us anymore. You're paying your own bills. So it kind of took a step of faith. But that just realized at that moment, there was just subtle messages like that just seemed obvious. This is the path I needed to step into. And then over time, now I've been doing it for over 20 years as a pastor. And you continue to find those moments of affirmation, even in the hard seasons.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the big moments come from the hard conversations, right? Like
exactly.
That's the tough part is there's so many of us that hate having those tough conversations because it makes us feel uncomfortable. But, you have a gift at being good at it and resonating and not sounding, too much of like, I don't care. Right. Because that's very hard to come across. Like when you just being there listening to someone, you think, the person's like pouring their heart out to you, because you're not saying anything. That's not because you don't care. It's because like you're taking it all in and you're waiting to process it all.
Absolutely.
But 20 years, that's amazing to do it and to be involved and just kind of, there's a lot of people that I know. I went to Southern Nazarene University, right? Yep. So there's a lot of people there who were, they were teachers or they did a teaching degree, but now they're a pastor somewhere. And, a couple of friends of mine, like they're great on stage, right? Like they just kind of love, that was their thing. Other people going to, youth or whatever it is, but they just, it's a skill that you've got to learn, right? But, that's one thing I think pastors in general across the board are very good at sharing a message, whether it's on stage or, to 5 people in a small group. Like it's really cool to have that and then you get those affirmations back. Yeah, but over 20 years, you've got a lot of those memories.
No, absolutely. I think the thing that keeps me going as a pastor, obviously, it's my relationship with Christ, but it's walking with people. I think oftentimes when I was younger in ministry, it was easy to kind of aspire to the more visible roles in the church and neglect just what things that are really important, which is more about the people and walking with people. And so definitely, I think most churches in America, I think are like 75 to 100. And so like, medium to large mega churches aren't like the norm in America. So a lot of pastors have to be a jack of all trades. Got to be the preacher, got to be the congregational care, got to, facilitate weddings and everything. And that's part of the excitement, and that's something I just kind of discovered about myself, even when I was in middle school through high school to be young adult to where I am today, is I have always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So that's one thing I also enjoy beyond just the walking with people and their faith and the highs and lows of life, is you just never know what you might step into. And a lot of that is exciting to kind of put on multiple hats. I work at a very large church, so we have the fortunate to be able to have specialists within the church and generalists. But in my role, I get to right now get to play the role of helping us start churches.
Oh, nice.
And that's kind of what I've come to learn is one of my favorite things to do in giftings is the startup. And so that's kind of what I'm doing my current assignment as a pastor at a church called Crossing. So
that's very entrepreneurial, right?
Yeah,
I mean, literally, you are starting businesses,
exactly,
and getting people in the door and building congregations.
And that's been exciting to discover that, because it's taken me, to be fully transparent, it's taken me a while to kind of realize within my own calling, what is my strength as a pastor. And I think over time, just some great leaders in my life, great mentors, and even my current pastor just saying, hey, this is clearly a gifting of startup and the building, the pioneering, building teams and all the structures. And once I kind of came to the realization, you don't need to be all things to all people, and then just be comfortable with the gifts that God's put in your hands. It's kind of been a really free living in that freedom in this past 3 or 4 years, because that's probably about the season I've been in, living in this current role, being able to just focus on the startup side of it. So when the pandemic happened, our church, obviously all churches had to get creative and go online, and we were ready for that. But a door opened amazingly. We were in a prison called Joseph Harp and having our church service there, and that door opened to the DOC, the Department of Corrections, invited our church to be in every prison in the state of Oklahoma. So I helped our prison pastor for about 18 months travel around the state, go into prisons and start churches. Wow. And then that led to some other opportunities that we're always continuing to explore within our context. So it's been really, I give you all that to say, it's been really energizing to kind of put the entrepreneurial things that I've learned over the years into practice for the church.
Well, it's amazing too. Over the last 20 years, the churches, the way that people get a message across has evolved so much.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously because of, recent pandemic, you guys have to go online. But even before that, there was a lot more social media stuff. There was, it's not just, hey, come in on a Wednesday and a Sunday and just kind of have some food and listen to a 45-minute or 30-minute, sermon.
Exactly.
It's gone far beyond that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that all the churches in this season, or most that I've encountered beyond where I'm at, really stepped in. Some of them definitely needed the resources to step up into the media and stuff, but a lot of them stepped in and just, stepped into the moment of using technology or even getting innovative. We oftentimes use the season at our church to say, well, what do we also need to stop doing and not bring back?
Right.
So it was also a good season of evaluating what really matters.
That's super exciting, though, isn't it? Because, like I said, you've probably been through all of the experiences of now you're in quite a big church, right? So it's like a production that goes on every Sunday, and going from wearing multiple hats to just having your specialty basically, but it's a super exciting specialty to have, and raising churches is something that's special, right? Because then long after you're gone, they're still going to live on.
That's right.
Hopefully.
Absolutely. That's the hope. That's the prayer. I feel like many years ago, as we're thinking about this conversation, I feel like I was kind of given a dream of an image of that, just something that just inspires me to stay in the game when it comes to raising up and building churches. It was an image of me stepping into heaven and with my arm back to me with a baton to the next generation. So it was just a reminder of going, that's what it's about, is when we start these things, or, even if you're not a pastor and you're a business, you want to raise up leaders to do what you do so that your legacy lives on. And obviously in the church, it's not my legacy, it's God's. So that's what inspires me, is just like you were saying, just building up people behind us to to hopefully carry on the torch of these churches that we start.
I mean, perfect seamless transition. The reason we got connected is because you sent me a message on Instagram saying you need to interview these other people that you do work with.
Yes.
Not the fact that like, hey, I'm a barbecue guy and I've got 25,000 followers on Instagram. There wasn't that. It was, hey, you should check out this, and we'll call them out, Otis Oak.
Yes.
You should check out those guys because I'm sure you guys do a lot of work with them with the meat and stuff. And I was like, let's do us first, like, and then we'll move to them. Which for people listening, I'll put the links to their social medias in the description as well, so you can go check them out. But like, there's a lot of similarities with food. Food is such a great vehicle, right, for faith, right?
100%.
Like most people think of coffee, right? But like there's a lot of, you don't just drink
barbecue.
coffee, right? You think of barbecue, right? Which is great because literally, I mean, my wife doesn't really care for it that much, but she understands that I like it and basically puts up with me when I go grab some. But it's so good, right? Like food of all kinds has just this, it's a vehicle to, breaking barriers, right? Like breaking 100%. Down people just to kind of sit around and have a conversation. People drop their walls, don't they?
That's right. 100%.
And if it's over great food, like that just makes it better.
Yeah, food. I love that analogy too, because I think I'm all about we're building bridges of relationships, and food, barbecue, coffee, whatever your thing is, we need more of that in our world. It doesn't matter what you believe and all that stuff. Like we can find common ground around something that we enjoy. Yeah. So fill in the blank what that is. For me, it's barbecue. And I've met so many people in this barbecue community. It's just been insane. Like beyond my circle that I've been living in, and I've loved it. I've connected. I've been on podcasts with people in Canada and all across North America, just meeting new friends because we have a love for barbecue, regardless of what we do vocationally. It just brings people together, and it's so much fun. Oh yeah, like that's you bring in so many people, and no doubt you use it as a vehicle to bring in new people as well, because there's people that are just going to come to you that, like, when you dive into grilling, it's kind of like coffee and wine, right? You've got these like three things that, like, people get very serious about their coffee, their wine, and then their grilling, right? Like, especially in Oklahoma. So, 100%.
It's a science, isn't it? You probably hate the person who buys a Traeger and is running it by its app. Like, you're like, no, this is my thing. Like, this is a process and science, and everybody's different, but everyone's got the best process, right?
Oh, it's so true. Those offset smokers, they kind of hate the pellet folks. So
funny. I love it. But I mean, I am a terrible cook because I haven't devoted my life to learning it. And I would probably be one of those pellet grill Traeger people, but I don't even have a Traeger, or any grill for that matter, which most Oklahomans would think that I'm not a real man if I don't have a grill on my back porch. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
I love it. For me, it's like when it comes to barbecue, I tell people it doesn't matter what kind of grill you have, smoker, like it's about getting in the game. Yeah. Like just get in the game. I don't care if you're a gas, charcoal, wood, pellets, offset, like it's just a fun hobby, and just the process of watching food transform and then get to watch people enjoy it. Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm not too snobby when it comes to the type of, although I've got my preferences, no doubt. I'm not too snobby about what kind of grill you got. Yeah.
So where does it start then? Where does kind of does Dad have a grill growing up? Is that a big family thing? Like where for you is that first kind of, oh man, I just remember being around a grill and the smell and the meat and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up, my dad was really just a gas griller. We weren't really a cooking family, which is really interesting. I feel like I lived on the George Foreman in high school. Like it wasn't healthy. It wasn't like fancy grills or anything. Like just, my dad had a grill in the backyard, gas grill. And when I got to college and got married, I was a gas grill guy. So I really didn't get into a true form of barbecue until maybe in my young adult career when I lived in Chicago. I remember a friend of mine having an offset smoker and a green egg. Yeah. And I just being a young adult, young professional with no money, just thinking, man, one day I could be like you and have a green egg,
Yeah.
or just some really fancy smoker. That'd be awesome. But growing up, gas grill, and my grandpa owned a grocery store in Milwaukee, Oklahoma, and he used to, fry and grill things. And so I've got some faint memories of him being kind of in the trenches a little bit. But for the most part, it just slowly became something that has always intrigued me over time. But I think the turn for me was probably when I was living in Chicago with a friend that had some really nice smokers, and he would cook for us. And then I was like, man, I got to learn this. I just was fascinated by the process.
Barbecue and Chicago don't generally go together, right? Do they?
Not. You know what? Every state has some beautiful, like, little diamonds in the rough that you don't know about. I think my only exposure, and this was before I really studied it, but when I lived in Chicago, I wasn't into it. I was learning about it.
Gotcha.
And so probably Famous Dave's was the closest barbecue place. You could buy some Famous Dave's sauce here. I don't even know if we have Famous Dave's in Oklahoma City or not. But all that to say, it's probably the closest barbecue shop. But you have to really travel outside. But downtown, I'll tell you, downtown has all this stuff in Chicago. So I my friend of mine, he gave me an offset, a really kind of rusted out one when I was in Chicago, because he knew I was just kind of, drooling over his barbecue. He's like, man, let's just get you started. So he gave me one that he wasn't using. And I remember my roommate at the time was like, I always tell this to people, I said, he's like, you made the worst ribs ever. You overburnt the ribs. Yeah. Like they were charred. And he's like, and so it's become a principle for barbecue for me. He's like, sometimes you've got to make bad barbecue in order to make great barbecue. And so it's been a lesson ever since I was determined. It's like, I want my roommate, and now, we're both married and have kids. Like, now he looks to me, that same roommate, we're both best friends, and he looks to me, he's like asking me, barbecue tips, and I've even sent him a grill, a smoker, and so it's fun to kind of look back on that memory. So many years ago, we're going, man, I had no clue what I was doing, and just stepping into it. But that's part of the journey, of anything that I look back and go, and I'm still learning. I'm not a culinary expert. I'm a backyard barbecue enthusiast that is self-taught, and I learn from others, and then you learn from your mistakes, and then you learn best practice from others, and you just kind of make it your own.
So many analogies from food, right? Like, especially barbecue, like the whole process is like, you could just just put it on something else, right? It just relates to so many things.
It does.
But the good thing is, like, when you get to a point, like you said, you'll never probably master it, because it's very hard to master it, because everybody's different.
That's right.
Like that satisfaction of like, your roommate now sending you questions, right?
Yeah.
Or just like feeding people who've never had barbecue before, and you're like, this is amazing. How did you do that? Which is pretty special. But diving into, I guess, like the building a brand side of it then, because that was probably, as far out as like not even knowing how to cook. It's like, I never thought that I'd build a brand and have brand deals and have a social media following. Like,
oh my gosh, that's so true. So this side of it started when the pandemic happened, and I remember a friend of I were chatting, and he kind of made a comment that inspired me, that led me onto this journey of the content creation. Yeah. That wasn't even on my radar. And he said, like, let's use the pandemic as a season for creating and not consuming. Mm-hmm. And that really inspired me, because like, it'd be easy. Obviously, we all have jobs. You got to do things online now for that season. But like, when you have your extra time, let's not be sitting and just binge watching Netflix. What would it look like to actually use our time to be creating versus consuming? So that actually kind of put me on a journey of like, okay, you know what? I have this hobby of barbecue. What would it look like to, create, not just barbecue, but just film it and take pictures. Yeah. And I just remember another friend was like telling me, he's like, he hates seeing food posts on people's profiles. Like, that's just his thing. an aversion to. So I was like, I'll just create a separate account that's just for barbecue, for people that love food versus my personal one.
Yeah.
I just started posting pictures on Instagram and videos, and it really started with pictures. Now it's all pretty much all video, and that started growing and slowly taking off. And then I started getting encouragement. Well, why don't you put a full recipe on video, maybe put it on YouTube, and gosh, like I said, I had no clue what I was doing. Production. I mean, gosh, you guys have heard a little bit. I'm a pastor, so I that's not my expertise, is to know how to film.
Yeah.
I know how to communicate, but it's not. And again, even communicating, I wouldn't say is like my strength. Right. So I was like, there's just a lot of unknowns, but I'm doing this for friends that maybe are interested.
Yeah.
And it just grew over time. And then once I began to realize that this was a niche, if you will, and there was a art to it. If you really studied it, you start learning there's a process to content creation. Oh, there's a thing called branding and having brand deals, and so I didn't know any of that starting out. I just kind of did it, and I didn't even have a logo or anything. And then over time, I was like, okay, I probably needed a logo, so I paid for a cheap one off of Fiverr, and it was not really a good logo at all. And I'm not even saying my current one's great, but it just wasn't great. But it just became fun. And so for me, the content creation, why I continue to do it is it's a hobby that is very fulfilling. It's a creative outlet that really kind of energizes me. And there's a lot of other benefits of why I still enjoy it. Yeah. But I started learning, I started researching, and that's one of the things I love to do. I love to research. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put that same principle to barbecue. So I started researching content creation and best practices, and realized, there's actually a strategy to YouTube. There's a thing called an algorithm. What the heck is that about? I just never paid attention, Right. It's like when you buy a car that you're interested, all of a sudden you see that car everywhere. That was true for me on YouTube, and the words like algorithm and analytics and all this stuff. And then brands start approaching you, or you're approaching brands that you're interested. They start asking you questions about, your demographics of people, and you're like, I got to find that feature on my... Right,
let me figure out what insights are and figure that out.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when I first started, I didn't know any of that stuff. And then having a CV for your,
like a media kit.
A media kit for your content creation. I had to create one of those. And so I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning, because it's only been probably maybe 3 years into the content creation side of it. Not the barbecue side, but the content creation. So
the thing is, that's two different animals, right? You got to focus on cooking great food, and also feeding a family, right? You're not just like throwing this food away. It's going to somebody. But then you've got to focus on the editor side of you, which is like, okay, camera angles, audio, and like figure out like, how do I make this a compelling story?
That's right.
Like this, cooking's hard enough as it is.
Yeah, 100%. And then to do it. And another challenge recently has been not only with the video, because you do have a little grace when you're doing video. Yeah. You could splice things that you don't want. You're like, I totally screwed that one up. I'm just going to splice that.
Editing's great.
I'm going to edit this to make it look good. This is awesome. And so there's that side. But one thing that's been a great challenge in this season is I've been having the opportunity to do live cooking shows.
Oh, wow.
And one of the companies I work with has been asking me to teach live from my backyard, use my iPhone and my laptop, and have different angles. And then I'm just walking an hour's worth of live teaching. But the room for error...
People cook with you during this time then,
Yeah,
right?
so just a few evenings ago I did it, and I had about 1,000 of my closest friends watching me cook barbecue. We reverse seared a ribeye steak with some Hasselback potatoes. I hope you're hungry listening to this.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just walked everybody through that recipe. Previous class I did a month ago was party chicken wings with some Alabama white sauce. And so I bring that up to say that was another challenge for me in this content creation. It was getting opportunities to teach live classes. Yeah. And like you're saying, balance out. I've got to focus on the recipe, make sure I'm not doing everything's right. Don't overcook something while I'm paying attention to, the camera shots or whatnot.
And then you have a Q&A feed as well, right? People are asking if you're live. People are asking you questions live.
Yeah, and I had AirPods in, making sure, and I'm new to AirPods, and so, following out my big ears, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm live on here, So it's been a fun journey to kind of also experience the live aspect of cooking and teaching too, but really energizing to help people. And I think that's why I also do the creation, is teaching people the basics, because I think every, any person, man, woman that's into barbecue and grilling should be their backyard heroes for their family and their neighborhood. Like, it's just fun. Yeah. And it's introduced me to so many neighbors. Like, I remember last summer being at the park with my girls, and my one of my neighbors that at the time I didn't know was my literal backyard neighbor. Yeah. We were just chit-chatting, kind of somehow talked about food and talked about barbecue. It's like, oh yeah, barbecue all the time. He's like, wait a second. Are you the guy that I smell barbecue like all the time? Like right behind me? We connected the dots. We were literally, neighbors from the back fence, and now we share our barbecue with each other and peek over the fence and just check on each other. So you're right. It just brings people together, and it's been fun.
It's so awesome to have that realization. It's like, you're the guy that makes me hungry every day. I smell it every single time.
Wait a second.
Oh, that's brilliant. But you're right. Like, and I love that it all comes back from, creating, not consuming. Because, that is something that's a lesson that, like I said, doesn't have to be in food. It can parallel to anything. The fact that you're out there creating something, and it could be food, it could be, a poem, a writing. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. The fact of being creative and creating something gives you so much more, it's better than just doom scrolling, lying in bed, and then it's like, oh, it's midnight. I've been in bed since 3, I've been in bed since 10 o'clock, and I wasted 2 hours of my life. Yep. But it's amazing how it's evolved, right? How in 2 years, 3, this is the 3rd year, like the content's evolved. And like I said, you're a researcher, so you dive into how many times do I need to post on YouTube? Yeah. Like, what are the video? Like, what are the thumbnail stuff? And like, there's a whole algorithm, which is a minefield and changing all the time. But then obviously having a great, Instagram following and figuring out the differences with just, because nothing works on one that really works on the other,
I'm on, Pinterest, which is kind of funny to say, and they just started like their version of Reels, and called Pins, and then TikTok I'm on, and you're right, all those platforms are so unique. What I thought might work on something, now that's kind of a fun challenge to figure out what connects, and you got to think about just like in business, you got to think about what your hook is, and what's going to be that shot that's going to be really fascinating for people to want to click. I had one video that really actually helped grow my Instagram, not just this summer, was a 16-second clip, and I really didn't plan it for this reason. But it was kind of an ASMR, which is kind of it's the whole idea of the sounds and things that really trigger your brain. And it was me removing what's called a membrane from ribs, and then the ribs, the sound of the membrane pulling off, and then the ribs slapping the cutting board, got 13 million views. And I'm like, and I was on vacation. I was like, what just happened? Like, and I didn't even really plan that to go, like, I'm shooting this. Right. This is going to blow up, right? Yeah, this is going to go viral. Because I'm to the point where I'm like, you should, at least what I do vocational, like, I'm just doing this for fun. Right. And so, and I am curious of what works and what doesn't. But I wasn't like, I gotta create this viral video. It just was, this is fun. This is a fun shot. But it just was fascinating to see what worked. And that same video did not do as well on some other channels, like 13 million views. That just didn't happen on the other channels. So it's like you trying to capture that moment and go, how do you recreate that? It was pretty difficult to figure that one out. But it's interesting what really connects and what doesn't.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I'm watching it now, and you're right. It is very, like, it's literally just you pulling off the membrane. Like, it's very basic. Yeah. But, and at the time you're like, I need to post content. Let me just post this. Probably, like, there's a lot of the stuff that I do as well. And the last thing you think is, this is going to, 13 point, that's nuts, right? Some people are like, oh, I got 100,000 views. It's amazing. But like, 1 million is nuts. 13 million is
comments are hilarious. I think that, to me, that's what really kind of brings, it can really trigger you if you're not careful. You got to let things, you got to let that stuff go, shake it off. Yeah. Never take it personal. But like, especially on this one, like, you were saying up top, like barbecue or any niche, everyone's going to have like, this is the way you've got to do it. You got no membrane people, commenting on my bananas in the background. Or like, your bananas they're done. Like, you need to throw those away. I'm like, you don't care about the ribs. They're just looking at what's in the background.
Why does it matter?
So you just get a chuckle going, like the things that people pick up on your videos, and just okay, that just made me laugh.
Tell me a little bit about kind of like local then collaborations that you've done, and kind of local companies, obviously like the one that originally reached out for, Otis Oaks and a bunch of others. Like, what's it like being in Oklahoma, being from here, and having this kind of like tie and now business relationship with local ranching and farmers?
It's become really important now that I've stepped into this, really supporting local farmers, and farmers throughout the nation. But definitely, my wife and I started researching. She actually put me on to a few of these farmers. There's Otis Oaks, and we're friends from college. And then I didn't know at the time, that he was starting his own little farming thing. And so we started talking, and I was like, man, like, you got to get your stuff out there. Like, what you have is so good. And then we found out another, farmer that we also purchased from just to support. He's a veteran-owned rancher, and so we support them. And then there's another one in Kansas called E3 that I support. So I try to support multiple just because I think local ranching is so important, farmers. And they all have their unique niche and story. But when you were talking about Oklahoma, like a few of these are just Oklahoma-based, and so you love Oklahomans. Like, that's one of the reasons why we moved back home. Is it's a family-friendly place to live. Its cost of living is amazing, obviously, but it's the people that makes the state, and so that's what really connects me to these in my barbecue niche. Finding local farmers and just supporting them, and knowing that supporting their families, and then telling their stories, trying to get their stories out, and they're the real heroes. And then the price of produce and meat is just outrageous, and these farmers are trying to find creative outlets to make it affordable for you, versus some of the big stores out there.
Right. Yeah. They're getting pinched, and and squeezed in every angle possible, and they're so great for not just local, and local economy but health-wise as well. There's something about eating food that was grown, comes out of the ground, not the processed stuff that we all love, sadly, because it sometimes tastes better. Well, sometimes, depending on who's cooking it.
That's right.
But you're right. That's probably one of the things that kind of puts people off buying local food, is that it's a bit more expensive. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely. And another business I think I've worked with, when you were asking, is like I've worked with Schwab, and they've been a fun company that are Oklahoma-based. Try to connect with different barbecue stores, throughout the state, and just support them. And I don't have these grills, but Oklahoma Joe's, Cosmos Q is just, he's a huge barbecue guy, and has his own.
Is that the guy in Tulsa?
He's in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And he has his own product line and sells grills, but his whole thing is rubs and sauces and things like that, but has a store off of I-40. But he's big in the barbecue world, won competitions. But there's a lot of cool Oklahoma barbecue stories out there that have their own either rubs or smokers, like Oklahoma Joe's is an example. And there's a lot of even offset companies out there that are based in Oklahoma. But Texas oftentimes gets the attention. But man, we've got just fantastic barbecue guys in Oklahoma that are winning championship barbecue across the nation, and just slowly, just have to tell their stories to go, man, like, we can make good barbecue here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's one of the tough things, isn't it? If a people if they like barbecue, they usually find one that they love, and they will not go anywhere else.
That's right.
It's like kind of forcing them to say, hang on, like, I know you love this. You're going to get great food here. Just try somewhere else for once, right?
Yeah.
And figuring out. But then it goes deeper than that, because they know exactly what they want. Sometimes if they go to multiple, they're like, well, I like the ribs from here, I like the brisket from there.
Yep.
And then you just kind of build this, like, monster plate is taking you an hour to collect from around Oklahoma
so
City.
True. And for me, it's also kind of turning out, I don't mind spending more money. Barbecue and food in general is expensive right now when you go eat at a restaurant. And so even going to a barbecue joint, you might be thinking, man, it's just so expensive, even for one or two people. But you start thinking about the faces that it's supporting their business. But I also balance out cooking from home. So I try to support the local families also at the barbecue joints. But I also hold the intention of going, I can also make it from my own backyard. And now my wife prefers steaks from home than going to a restaurant and spending a ridiculous amount. You can make, if you know what you're doing, you can make just as good, if not better, food at home if you really learn the art of it.
That's one thing I love here, and one thing my parents love when they visit is the fact that like the steaks here are just so much better than they are back home, and I don't know why, but they just are. Like, and they're just bigger, thicker cuts. Like the first thing my parents want to do when they come here is go to a steakhouse.
I love it,
and it's also because I think generally it's a lot more cheaper here than it is back home to eat steak,
I can imagine.
With all that stuff. But it's kind of funny to have them visit and stuff. But tell me then the obviously age-old question of what are your favorite barbecue places in town, because there is plenty. But don't tell me the favorite. I want to know what's the latest one that's come up that's new, because everyone knows their barbecue spots and probably will understand the names.
Probably my few favorites. And again, I appreciate all of the places in Oklahoma City. But one of my favorites I really enjoy is the Butcher Stand. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's off that beaten path. I forget what little town it is, Wellston or something like that.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite. And they've got great rubs as well, but just a cool environment, great food.
Great people.
Love Texlahoma. So a few of those places are more like on the side of town where I live. Obviously, there's some really good places in central Oklahoma City and probably Yukon. But those are probably my two I frequent, when I can, if I'm not making it myself. Yeah. And there's many more, like I said. So
Butchers, you got to tick off the Butcher barbecue stand.
You do.
Like because there's so much, and it's fun like knowing their story, right? And it's literally just being a stand, and now they have like a legit in-house like big restaurant. I mean, it's a big space now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
First time I went there, they had the cover, but it was just like a barn. It wasn't like filled in, and they had bench seating and stuff. It wasn't like it is now. But it's just an experience, going up early in the morning, getting in line, and then waiting for them to roll it out at 11 o'clock or 10:30 when they start, and that whole like family type experience of like I can't remember what the guy's name is, but he welcomes everybody in.
He does.
Gives that big speech, and then they're off to the races, and you get your food.
That's right, and people are standing out line just waiting until they're done. It's such a cool. You're right. It's an experience.
Yeah,
and that's really what you want. When you're cooking barbecue, you want the experience to kind of bring people in, and then obviously it's just amazing when it tastes awesome as well.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, because this has been such kind of like still a short period of time. And obviously this ties into your pastoral job and the things that you do, which is, it couldn't be better. What's kind of like your plan and goal for the future? I mean, you've had some time to figure it out and thought that, hey, this is a legit thing now. Like I can really do some damage with this. I can really make an impact.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
On the barbecue side of things?
Yeah.
I'm still on that journey. I've definitely got more clarity than ever. I would say my personal mission in life is creating environments that help others have an encounter with Jesus and come fully alive. So for me, like we were talking about building bridges of relationships and how food brings people together. So I kind of thinking about barbecue content creation, one, to teach people the basics, but how it ties to ministry for me is it's become a personal ministry, one that allows me just to build friendships out of my circle, with no intention of trying to, just be Scott, live out my faith naturally and just authentically, and then just follow those prompts. So for me, on that side of it, I'm viewing it just as a personal ministry of barbecue. It's also been able to be kind of that little side hustle that, and I won't say a significant amount, but enough to be able to bless family that I'm able to make a little income on the side now.
Yeah.
And that helps, different things that, you want to do. And so, but for me, it's the creative aspect that keeps me going, the personal ministry. And then now it's I guess you can call it a holy hustle. I don't know,
I love
that's
that.
not the right word, but just to kind of help support the family in different ways.
Yeah.
And so that's what keeps me going. As far as my plans, I'm just I'm just taking the journey as it goes. I don't know if I don't think I feel, at least at this season, I don't feel the sense, we use this in the church world a lot, calling, if you will, to maybe do this full time barbecue. But for some reason, if that door opened, I guess I would explore it. But I don't get that sense right now. It's just a fun personal ministry and something that's blessing the family and making just tremendous friendships. So I'm just kind of going along with the ride and see where it might take me. Yeah,
because you're right. If you think I want to go open a spot, right? Then it becomes a job. It gets serious.
Exactly.
It takes the fun out of it, right?
100%.
Because you're not like, right now it's like, I probably get some free meat, or I get some steaks, and I get some great content, and I get to share this story, and it's fun. Like, it's a release for you.
Exactly. And that's where it all started. A leadership mentor told me a long time ago, it's like, you need to find a hobby that you enjoy. So I tried biking, I tried running and marathoning. I hate it, man. Like, that sucked. Like,
it does,
I was like, and it's a love language for some people. Like, it's just like barbecue is for me. It's like people's thing. And I wore the spandex, friends. It did not look good, feel good. I did not enjoy that journey. So I threw that stuff off. I try to stay healthy for sure in other paths, but that barbecue became that hobby, and that side thing that was rewarding and fueling the soul beyond my faith. So it started. You're right. I wanted to. That's kind of the litmus test for me. Is like, if this begins, there's no doubt. Like, video creation is still a job. Even though this is fun, there's a lot of work to. I film everything on my iPhone. I edit everything on my iPhone as well, because I wanted to keep it simple. And because now, these have amazing cameras.
Yeah.
And, bought some lighting and stuff like that. So it's still work, but it's enough work that energizes me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a litmus test for me. If it becomes where I feel like it's really just draining me, then I'm going to take a pause and reevaluate. And I even got to the point where I started researching with analytics. You want to be consistent with your posting. And I still do, but I still have this filter in my head, like, I'm not going to be a slave to posting weekly if I can't do it, because that's not my main focus. I got a family. Now you'll see if you follow me, I do post a lot, but I think I found a rhythm where I post when it's energizing. I try to include my daughters into it, and my family and my wife, and they are just an amazing support as well. They enjoy the food, and they enjoy the road. So much so, my 9-year-old's learning about YouTube and analytics, and she's starting to talk the language, and I'm like, this is kind of fun. And some might have different opinions, that young, but I've actually set them up with a fun kids channel with all the appropriate things that you need to do for kids. And now she's learning some skills like filming and editing, and she's researching analytics. And it's super fun as a dad to be able to sit down with your kids and see what their passions develop, but actually learn some tangible skills about stage presence and mics, and she's researching as a 9-year-old. Like, she's researching stuff, and it's like, so this is pretty cool to watch, her. But I'm trying to keep it in balance for her and still be a kid. But so, anyways, it's a little side tangent.
That's really cool to have that experience as a dad, right? Because there's a lot of dads out there that would just love to have something that they get to do with their kids, and back to your point, you keep it fun, and there's probably gonna. When you start thinking, I need to knock out a post here, or I need to do, I need to create some content, but it starts taking you away from your family time, that's when you know to take a step back, right?
That's right.
Okay, we need to reevaluate here, because this is not the goal.
Exactly.
But like you just said, to have the kids involved is, that kills two birds with one stone, right?
It's awesome.
Really cool.
On my barbecue stuff, I have them as taste testers,
Yeah.
or I'll do blind taste testing. I'll have a few proteins for people to go, which is better, and I'll have them be taste testers. And it's super fun to, and there was one video I did on charcoal versus gas video to help people learn like the differences and cooked a protein. I think it was like steak or something like that on a gas grill versus a charcoal grill. Had my daughters be blind taste testers. They had no clue which one. They guessed right. They guessed the charcoal because I cook on charcoal all the time. They guessed charcoal. They guessed right. I was like, I'm raising them right. All right. This is good. This is pretty impressive. They actually knew the difference.
So awesome. Well, mate, I really appreciate you coming down. Really appreciate kind of just you reaching out and just seeing, your journey and then just kind of loving, like I said, finding a hobby and just coming back to, creating and not consuming. Like that's a really valuable lesson for people listening, regardless of if it's food, coffee, making cakes, anything. Like if you can go out, create videos, just go and put your mind and use your time, right?
That's right.
Rather than, just like I said, doom scrolling on your phone, watching endless TikToks or whatever.
Exactly.
But for people listening, I'll post the links to Scott's barbecue page in the description, and then any other links you want to send me for people you work with and highlights, we can do that as well in the Oklahoma companies.
Sure do appreciate it.
But yeah, really appreciate it. And for people listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.